Well, hello there again, friends. Today is 10/8/2022, and today is the Odin Project Blog Day 155. And I completed state and props module of the JavaScript course for today. I am 72% complete with the JavaScript section, and my brain is full. How about your guys's? Are you guys spewing full of information yet? Or spilling over? I am definitely spilling over and probably spewing. So obviously today is all about state and props. I'm not even going to make an attempt to try to cover all the material because it'd make for a really long and boring video, but there is a lot of good stuff here. Uh, Take your time with it if you haven't done it yet. Don't skip any of it. They recommend coding along with them as they go through these examples. I think for just the simple fact that you can get used to the syntax and the methodology and all that as you're typing it. I chose instead just to focus on the reading and understanding of it. So I guess that may bite me in the butt in a little bit, but as we get going, I think in the next lesson we'll actually be putting some code down on the page, so I'll get used to the syntax as we go there. So like little things like I probably won't remember if there's a bracket, in between H1, little stuff like that. You might forget that you put a closing tag at the end of the render on your div for your component call, those sorts of things. So anyway, like I said, there's a ton of stuff in here. It just goes on and on and on. Um, Take your time with it. I spent the last day and a half or so, not total, hour each, looking over it, looking over all the supporting links inside. There's quite a few articles to read. And then you get down here to the assignment section. This is pretty good. It goes through goes out to the React docs page and just read about props section again. Actually, we read this one in the previous video for homework, or either that or it was in the links at inside embedded. But either way, it's just a re-review, and then this is a lesson on props. And I will say, I struggle with this, not material-wise, because it's more repetitive, just like I talked about in the last video, which is good for cementing the knowledge. But look at all this junk. That was just nonsense ads. I hate that this site, they're making money off these ads. So they spam the entire thing with ads. And for someone like me who has OCD and ADHD, I struggled. Look at all this junk. I absolutely struggled to focus on this because these stupid things. I know I'm going off on a tangent, just having fun with you guys. But seriously though, they change. Like there's animated ones like this crap over here, this crap. I mean, look at all this stuff changing all the time. So the minute I start to get focused on the reading, my eyes get diverted over to these dang ads. Trying to keep this family friendly, so not gonna say a swear word. But anyway, yeah, that was frustrating. So you might have to find yourself, if you struggle with that, you have to find yourself working a little harder on on this Geeks for Geeks website because of all these garbage ads. But anyway, that was interesting. So heading down here in the knowledge check. First one, it says, how do you pass function state or other values between components? Excuse me. So to answer that, we go up here to props again, right in the Odin reading. So you pass function state and other values between components via props, which is short for properties. So properties, props. They're key value pairs and you can have multiple per props per argument. So when you pass in props here on the constructor, for example, you can have one key value pair, you can have 10 key value pairs. It's however many you want, and you don't have to have the triple dots in front of it because the React background engine takes care of that. It understands what's going in there as long as you provide the proper syntax. And so that's how that works. I'm not sure how deep in these answers I want to go in these. How do you pass functions? Okay. So how you pass it between a component. So in this example, we have this my component, and it's a class component here. So we create the my component, we import the React and the component, so we can build our class. And we build our class, we build our render, and we pass in props. Just type in props there for constructor and super. That's required, otherwise the class will break and it won't work and won't pass props. So when you come down here to render, this is kind of key here. So you have your return statement we've done before, and the H1 you have this.props.title, and so that will pass the title that you will then define in app.js. So you'll export default my component, and down here is the app.js. So we're going to import what we just created up here in my component, and then we're going to create another class called app, and this is the constant example of app.js is kind of your main controller, if you will, and it's got the constructor of props and super props also there. We haven't learned too much about this, but just note that these have to be here. If you don't have them there, or you don't have props in here, the prop will not be passed, and I think you'll get an error message. I don't know, not tried it. But anyway, then you have the render down here, and then in this return on this render, it's calling my component, and it's giving it, so it's calling that my component class, and it's giving it the title React. So there's your value. So your key value, so your key is title and your value is React. So it creates the div on the render, and then it's going to call my component. So it creates that basically an empty div on the page, and then when this runs and this does the render, it's going to create another empty div, but instead it won't be empty because they're going to have H1, it's going to have a heading 1, and it's going to have the title. So the output will be React. So, and I don't know if they put that on the page or not. They didn't. They didn't give an example. But yeah, so on the browser it'll say React when you if you were to run this as an H1. So that's how that works. That's how you can pass through using props. What is the purpose of state in React components? Takes you up here to the state section in the Oden, and so basically the purpose of state is simply what we use and how we use to handle values that can change over time. So state is mutable, meaning it can change over time. It can change. You can change state within the class. Conversely, with props are immutable, meaning that when they're used within the context of the class or the component, it cannot change. So, meaning that the value of it cannot change inside of the component itself. You can change it, like I showed you before. You can set it or change it on the return, but inside of the logic of the class, for example, like this dot state, you're setting it as 0 here, for example. Well, you can't do that with a prop. That is a no, and it's a rule within the React engine. So states are mutable, meaning you can change them. So that's how we have this dot state. We're basically initializing it to 0, kind of like we've done in the past with JavaScript when we're incrementing indexes. Same type of concept. So this is count. We'll need to change on every click. We want to hold that value in state. So we're just going through an example here, and you have to bind it. Since we're using class, we have to use this. So we got to bind this to whatever it is that we're creating or looking up. So we have this dot state. The count is the key value. So we create a count up internal method, and we got to bind this to that. That sounds funny. Bind this to count up so that we can use it. Otherwise, we can't use it as a state. and then in the count up we set the state is count equal is this dot state dot count plus 1. Important to note, since state is mutable, meaning you can change it like this inside of the class itself or the component. If I keep saying class, I should just say component. Sorry about that. So you have to change it as this dot set dot state. If you just typed in this dot state dot count plus 1 just like this, or used it just like this without putting it in set dot state, you will I don't know if you'll get an error, but it won't work the way you think it will, and you'll get undesirable errors and results, because you're actually changing the value of count, the key value pair of count. You are incrementing it yet, but you're not using set state, which is a internal method to the React engine. So basically every time it sees set state, React will rerun the render. So it'll rerun this right here. So by just changing this count, if you just have this code in here without the set state, it will change the count, but it won't run the render. So the page basically won't update on this example with the click, and you'll have undesirable results. So basically you'll be iterating through, but you won't see it on the screen. So always remember you gotta use the set state. Explain the importance of using set state instead of mutating state directly. I just talked about that actually, so I'll skip that. So basically you have to use that set state because it is mutating. Like I said, it's a mutable object, mutable item, mutable context. The state is so, but you have to use that set state. What is the difference between functional and class components, and how does their syntax for handling props differ? Well, that's a mouthful. What is the difference between functional and class components, and how does their syntax? Okay. That's a long answer. So I'm not really going to go through that one in detail because it's all right here basically, and that would be a very, very long answer. So basically we can just go through this example here. They give an example of this is a functional. As you can see, it's not using a class. So just showing you how you'd write this out with a functional component. Yeah, you're passing in your props here, and then you're returning props.title. This isn't there. This dot is not in front of it because you don't need to use that. That's not needed when you're using a function, an ES6 function, because you're passing in props as an argument, so you're able to get everything from the props. And so when you come down here conversely to app.js, we import my component like we did in the previous example, and then my component, we're having it called here in the function app return statement here, and then we're giving it the title key value pair of hello world, and then that'll be what gets returned on in the div on the page. And just an example of how you can do that with using a function versus using a class, which is what we used, or what was our last example was. So we still have to export it. Remember, if you use default, you can pass the app function name directly out and don't have to put curly brackets around it. Didn't really answer the full question there, but that is a big answer. So that's basically the roundabout way. So I'll let you guys read into that further for further understanding, because I don't want to make this video overly long. How do you attach event listeners to elements in React components? So I kind of reviewed this before starting the video, so I don't stammer through stuff too crazy. We actually didn't review this. We didn't go over this at all in the material. So I kind of breezed through a little bit. It's in essence, to make the answer succinct, this is basically how you do it using a function component. So we have a function called form, and then we're gonna invoke basically a looks like a local function called handle submit, passing in e, short for event, and then we have e.prevent default. We talked about this in a previous lesson. I don't remember exactly what e default is. You must call prevent default explicitly. Another difference is that you cannot return false to prevent default behavior in React. You cannot return false. Okay, I think it's a function of the way that the event is handled, and so if you use the prevent default, it forces the event activity to be true, and if it's false, it won't allow it to continue. And so that's essentially that. I could have that butchered, but like I said, that's outside the scope of this exercise. And then we console.log, you click submit, and then on the return statement here, this is kind of the key. This answers the question of how to bind the event listener. So we have a form here, open and close tags. So on the return statement here, we have JSX for form. We have on submit equals handle submit. So what it's doing here is JSX. We're saying we're calling on submit, and we're giving it this is not a value. This is actually handing it a function. So we're going to hand it, because you can hand, we haven't seen it so far until now, but you can actually hand over, pass over, if you will, functions instead of just variables if you do it like this. So on submit equals handle submit. So what it's going to do is going to come up here and it's going to run the handle submit event, E for event, and it's going to console.log, you click submit, and then we create the button and type submit. So this is your traditional, basically it's HTML, even though it's JSX technically. But you have your button, it's being created, and you're putting the word submit in there. That is pretty much HTML. I don't know. I guess it is. I guess it's pure HTML there. And so we're going to console.log, you click submit after the button is clicked. So that's the event. That's the E there. So so here is basically returning it. We're creating the button, and we're waiting for the on submit is the internal event handler that's being used by in the background by the React engine to handle that click event. So when that click event happens, it's gonna call the handle submit, and then run this code and console.log out, you click submit. I way over explained that, but hope that made sense. Again, I didn't go through this whole document. We didn't go through it at all in the reading, but feel free to peruse that if you'd like. And that's it. So keeping this one kind of, well, I always say I'm going to keep them short, and then they end up being long. But I hope you learned something today anyway, guys. Thank you for coming along the journey with me. I know my mind is full right now. I know the next lesson we're going to be getting into doing some actual project work, I think maybe, or starting to go that route. So we'll have a chance to put these things we've been learning into practice, because we've been getting our brains stuffed here the last couple days for sure. But it's good. It's good. The struggle comes in the learning, I suppose, and the doing. So anyway, please like, share, and subscribe for more content, and let me know in the comments section what you guys think so far of these sections and getting our feet wet with React. So with all that said, until next time, see ya!